Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another video. This is Lawyer Take, episode 3. It's Tizio, your 24-year-old California lawyer. So today's episode, as you can see, will be about COVID issues. This might be something that you have considered since COVID has been around for a while now, and who knows how long it'll last. Maybe it's stuff that you didn't consider because you haven't really thought about it or personally experienced it. But this video is here to be informative. So let's get right into it. For starters, the first issue that I'd like to discuss is tenants issues. So as you know, tenants cannot be evicted around this time because of COVID, and landlords and tenants have kind of been going through tenseful situations, to say the least. So, there have been circumstances where tenants were evicted when they shouldn't have been. That's a big issue. One of my close friends, who's an attorney in Virginia, is actually dealing with issues like that. Kind of like I'm experiencing it secondhand because I'm hearing all of the stories that he's discussing, and I'm kind of hearing my own stories out here in California and situations like that. I know landlords are kind of stuck in a situation that they might not be that happy about, which is kind of understandable. It is, these properties are to make like money, and especially places like California where, you put a lot of money into investments properties and kind of need the money back. Kind of understandable. I understand it from both perspectives. Tenants, you kind of feel sorry for them. A lot of them might not be able to work. Or they might not have been able to work in previous months because of COVID and stuff like that. And you need a place to live, especially if you have a family, and it's like kind of unfortunate that you're kind of in this sticky situation where you are supposed to provide for them, and it's becoming really difficult to do so. The second issue is interesting. I think it affects the economy and everybody kind of at large. And this is bankruptcies, and this is personal bankruptcies and also businesses going bankrupt. So as you could imagine, this is very unfortunate for everybody. Personal bankruptcies, a lot of people are going bankrupt that maybe would not have assumed or ever predicted this would happen. It's kind of reminiscent of like that 2007, 2008 time period where people were going bankrupt because of the market crash. Really reminds me of that, and it's really unfortunate. You never see it coming. When it comes to businesses themselves, I think I'll just look at this iPad real quick. It seems like on April 14th, there were sources that were saying that 7.5 million businesses were at risk. And by May 12th, which is less than a month later, over 100,000 had closed in the United States. If you think about it, that is so many businesses. I'm assuming a lot of them being small businesses that really essentially ran their business with profits on a monthly basis, kind of like check to check almost. And they just could not sustain it at that point when the customer base fell apart because of COVID. I haven't really looked at it since. I think I took these notes in like late June or mid-June, so they're like fairly new. I'm assuming that the numbers probably have increased by now. I think it's not ridiculous to say that well over 100,000 businesses have gone bankrupt since COVID has been around. The third thing, this is actually connected to personal bankruptcies, but not quite to that level. And it's the fact that the stimulus checks are not enough. I know other countries are giving way bigger stimulus checks, and they're giving way more frequent stimulus checks, whereas in America, from my understanding, there was just the one, and there was talks about the second stimulus check. I personally didn't even get one, so it's kind of like, a lot of people, I'm assuming, that maybe needed it didn't even get it. But in any case, even if you did get it, it's kind of hard to live by, a $1,200 check. And it becomes difficult, especially when you're living in a place like California where everything is super expensive, and you only have $1,200 to live, which is not much in California standards. So that's something to keep in mind, and I think that's a very relevant problem that all of us understood and saw coming, and maybe not as overlooked as other things that I've discussed. Somewhat interesting, I would say it's comical to a certain degree, but it's not if you're actually suffering, is fraud. It seems like fraud has gone up significantly during COVID because people are claiming to have products that cure COVID or help you avoid it altogether, which simply is not true. So in the past months, there have been many cases of fraud where people are selling products that clearly do not work. The part is people are out of desperation falling for it, and they're actually buying these products for whatever they go for in hopes of avoiding COVID altogether. Yeah, so fraud has gone up as well, so that's a prevalent problem. So another issue is family issues. I think this is something that maybe people would not think about unless they're actually experiencing it. And when I say family, I'm talking about custody issues where, parents aren't getting to see their children and stuff like that, because it's kind of like you don't want the children to go like back and forth, especially when you're talking about two parents living in two separate states and obviously divorced, and they're not getting to see their children. Even if you're in like the same area or the same state, it's kind of like going back and forth, and whether that exposure is good for the children, since it makes it more likely that they might catch COVID if they are not staying at home. Other family type issues is domestic violence, and that's something that I think we all might have overlooked. It's the fact that people are, because of stay-at-home orders, people are stuck at home with their abuser. So it's very unfortunate that they have nowhere to go, and because of the law, they're kind of stuck. I think they would be kind of vulnerable to begin with, so they're kind of stuck in the circumstances anyways, and that's why they have not left yet. And now you have stay-home orders kind of forcing them to be with their abuser even for longer periods than they otherwise would be. So that's like extremely unfortunate, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a girlfriend, boyfriend, kids being abused by adults or whoever, not being able to kind of have their escape by going to school, stuff like that. So it's really unfortunate. Another clear issue of COVID was traveling. I think that's pretty obvious for everybody, so I'm not really going to explain that. But the people that have taken the risk seem like they kind of pay the consequence of traveling. More likely than not, they have caught COVID. So it brings me to an interesting point, which is the fact that COVID basically caused the bar exam for July to be postponed. For California, it got postponed twice now. It was originally in September, and now it's in October. And states have all kind of fell victim to it. So there are far less lawyers coming in than there would be into the practice. July is a very monumental time of year for law students, and they take the bar exam. Most people graduate in May and they take the July bar exam, and they have kind of been deprived of that because of COVID, and state bars have not really, unfortunately, they didn't adjust to it in time for the July bar to kind of stand, and it was postponed instead for most states. So a lot of lawyers are not coming into the practice as they otherwise would be. So legal issues kind of aren't getting solved because there's not legal services being provided. Legal services kind of keep everything from going crazy in a certain way. It kind of ensures that everybody hopefully will act right, quote unquote, since the law is kind of being preserved by lawyers. Ensuring people are not violating the law, and if they do, they get sued. So, you kind of have all these areas that are suffering, and people are not being able to get the legal services they need. Firms are closing, lawyers don't have work because people don't have money to give them, and lawyers kind of have their own, they need money themselves to make a living and provide for their families and themselves. So that's getting kind of taken away. So like the economy is kind of falling apart. It's like the cycle where, you know, you can't afford legal services, you don't seek a lawyer, your rights are getting violated now, the lawyer can't represent you without money because they need money, and then now these firms are closing and stuff like that, and then everybody kind of suffers from it. So that's that. It's kind of like a quick overview of legal issues going on, some things that you might have considered or experienced, others which you might not have even thought about, like I didn't until I started really like researching into it and thinking about the consequences of COVID in relation to legal issues. But that is pretty much all. Thank you all for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and please check out my clothing line. Triumph, your dreams await.